Holy crap. I've made it to 10 subscribers. Hello there, my name is Ishtari, and this video is not only drastically different from my prior content, it's about twice as long. Before getting too deep into this, I'd like to say thank you all for getting me to 10 subscribers. I'm very aware that it's not much, but it's kind of humbling because of how low effort my videos have been before this one. And it was really humbling for me to watch my last video do so well. Again, not much, I know. But it's still more than the average on my channel and definitely better than I expected it to do. I think it had a rather relatable title. Don't worry, I'll continue to log my gains if that's all you really care about. I haven't decided on the exacts of how that will work out, but I've got some ideas. I'll post my gains on X for sure going forward, so make sure to follow me there, and maybe I'll do a monthly roundup where I talk about all of them and then other game things that I've, been thinking about in my head. I don't know yet. We'll see. But I've actually had this idea in the back of my head for quite a while now. Probably about 2, maybe 3 months, but I wasn't sure how to proceed. If you're familiar with the creator, Colonello, I was watching his video on either the Cabbage Cult or Massors and decided I could talk about my own clan. But again, I wasn't entirely sure how to get started, and actually, I was kind of nervous for a variety of reasons. But when I saw that I hit 10 subscribers, it was like getting hit by L. Thor from Manel, because all of a sudden, I just started writing and couldn't stop. I'll be slowly making my own music to use throughout the body of my videos. It's a hobby of mine and I may as well roll it into this channel as well. I'll use OSTs and Runescape music mostly for now. The new intro song, though, Another Dance, is by myself, obviously. So as long as there are no objections, it will be my consistent intro until I create one I like more for it. Title cards are also my concoction. I'll try my best on making sure that it isn't overwhelming, but let me know if you think I need to make adjustments. No guarantee that it'll ever line up with what's going on screen or with what I'm talking about, though. The music, that is. Forewarning, I am the friend who says that they like all types of music, and then actually means it. While I'm new to this type of video, I am no stranger to writing, funnily enough. I write with a clanmate or two and some other people because I'm a role player. I know in the past that was gross, but D&D is super popular now, and we've also taken it to Discord where we try to be less cringe about it. The idea is to convert all of our scattered lore into a comprehensive, if not long, video essay series that aims to modernize and revise the lore as needed to make it informative and more detailed when necessary to give more story to the largely basic bullet-pointed lore we have currently. I just realized how much of a run-on sentence that was as I was saying it. I apologize. But now I'm getting to it. Sorry if that's not your jam, but I hope you'll hear me out. I'm a bit of a history buff for both fantasy worlds and the real world. And my position in the clan is actually titled as the Lord of Roleplay, so I wanted to take a shot at backing up our history and our lore as sort of a recruitment tool, and also as a way to have a public-facing record that's all fairly centralized for history's sake. You can probably find stuff about us if you go searching for us. Maybe it was even posted by ex-members. I can't promise that I'll know everything, but I'll get to what I do know and then circle back around if it's needed or if it's requested a lot and I can get to the bottom of whatever it is, I hear this a lot when I watch video essays in my own time, but I'll try not to ramble too much because I know I can. I'll be proofreading and trying to get others who care to read through because at one point, This script was over 15,000 words long, and nah, I didn't really want that for my first essay. Some may be longer or shorter than this one, but I'm kind of rambling, aren't I? Maybe I'm just explaining myself. You get the point though, I think. This script is about half the size, so enjoy the diet version. I do have even more disclaimers before we can start though. I know a lot of lore purists who also roleplay out there, and even those that don't roleplay, don't like it when other roleplayers mess up the pristine Runescape lore. I'm just gonna say that roleplaying is first and foremost meant to be fun. A hobby that you engage in with friends. It's not a you know the rest of the saying. I say this because I will probably talk about things that aren't necessarily in regular RuneScape lore, and if you don't skip dialogue boxes like myself, this may cause your ears to shoot up sometimes. Or perhaps something I say will contradict what Jagex has given us in either major or minor ways, like in this video, but also in future installments as I plan on making through all of it in time. Look, we try to at least loosely base it in the lore. Especially in the modern day, I'll be trying my best to bridge that gap. But a lot of this was written by children, and while that may come off as insulting, I think you all know exactly what I mean. I didn't really get the lore back then, and neither did others aside from a few. I understand it much more clearly nowadays, but for the most part, we're still just kind of having fun in the world of Gielinor, and giving our collective twist on it. I know calling it an alternate Gielinor may be seen as kind of cheap, but this lore that Jagex has given us does contain a multiverse. The Dimension of Disaster is the most obvious example of that I can think of, and it's actually in the game. Maybe I'll get around to using an in-lore date proper, but as far as the real world goes, the founding of my clan, the Kingdom of Varrock, was on October 5th, 2006, by King Wormman I. It was before the current clan system, or even French chat existed. How we have this to an exact date is beyond me, but all sources give the same date so far as I can tell. I didn't really play back then, though. Not really, anyways. This account was only started in 2009, and there are long-lost predecessors, but I can only really play a few hours a week at the local library before 2009, so those are lost. And I joined KOV, the Kingdom of Varrock, 4 short years later, in 2013. Yeah, I've been in this clan for most of my RuneScape career, so you can see why I would want to talk about them, even if it is a bit nerdy or will bring down critique that I'm starting to feel like I'm ready for. Only people inside of this community and close friends have seen my writing before, and never like this. I will be making some minor adjustments on my old material. I do remember the broad outline of nearly every role-player story I've personally been involved in, even if I don't have it backed up somewhere. But I've been doing this for a long time, 11 years now, and my writing style has dramatically changed since then. So, if it can be done better, I will do it better. No retcons though, none of us like those. I'm more confident in my writing nowadays, but back then I was kind of a blithering idiot. For example, if I feel like something could be left to change later, I try not to set it in stone as much or even leave things somewhat vague until I figured it out, like a much smarter writer would do. I don't think you guys can hear it, but I can. As I'm recording this, crickets and grasshoppers are going crazy outside right now, and it is very distracting. Also doesn't help that cars go down my street at like 60 miles per hour for some reason. But back on topic. Before KOV, I did try to start my own clan though. I think every scaper probably tries this at some point in their time playing. Maybe not, but I did. The Elysian Realm. Obvious influence is the Elysian sigil, but actually the influence for the sigil is the root influence for this name, and that's the Elysian Fields, which is a different part of the Greek afterlife aside from the one ruled by Hades. My understanding is that heroes and those chosen by the gods come to live here when they die. I made it a realm because it was meant to kind of be a POC in a way, but without the dead, just honorable living people, and without the role-playing that has kept me here too. Quick aside, because it's a valid question, what's a POC, you ask? It's a player-owned city, which is kind of just as it sounds. Players, quote-unquote, own the city. Or region, cities, regions. I think you get it, right? Of course, it's all role-playing, and I've never bothered to look, but it could go back to the days of player killing everywhere. I would have hated that time because I am absolutely not a PKer and will never claim to be. You can see how many times I die to bosses that I shouldn't struggle with by now for yourself. I promise that my PKing is worse. Though sometimes I manage to get out of a tight pinch by the will of D, maybe? It's often the will D now. Yes, I'm a That could be unlikely though, as the archives call the POC concept relatively new at its founding. Point being, without the role-playing that makes KOV and other clans like it function, I was never going to enjoy even being in a clan like it, let alone leading one. So I very quickly disbanded and made my way to the forums. I don't think archives really exist without the Wayback Machine, and maybe they don't even exist there. Maybe I'll try to look though for the hell of it and find my original post. And research. I'm pretty sure it was my first ever post on the forums. Sad that the forums are gone now. I wouldn't have cared at all back then, sorry. I was too busy playing the game with people who had stopped playing or were no longer friends by the time I got around to getting sentimental over them, and KOV is the reason for that sentimentality. Didn't mind forums before then, and forums in general probably deserve their own video. Maybe think Reddit if you're too young. But it's ironic that Sora Varys is our clan leader now because she's the one who invited me to apply to join. And I did basically immediately after. It was just what I was looking for. So allow me to give you the retroactively made in-lore entrance for Jikdur. I made something similar to this when I first joined and posted it on the forums post, but it was not good and has probably been lost. It was rather undetailed, but I do remember it though because it was my first. Keep in mind that some things were decided upon later in time for not only drama, but also because we just became more concerned with reasoning and filling out the world. Or at least I did, and I think Sora feels the same. If you subscribe to my channel, it'll give me the motivation to keep this up and give you more. Had to. Oh, right. You don't know who Jikdur is, do you? Meet his current inspiration art, and this is also him as my in-game avatar. And the reality is that the in-game avatar is also me, the person that plays the game. You lose. I apologize, and I'll be serious. I've used the in-game avatar to represent myself since before I even joined KOV. I don't necessarily do this in every game though. Recently I have started to use a character based on Jikdur in Skyrim, and well, it looks like a slightly changed version of myself. He's not a Gary Stu, I promise. When I started role-playing, I had no idea about what I was doing. In the modern day, I view role-playing to be an extension of the fictional writing that I did as a kid. But I didn't see it as that then, and didn't even really understand what role-playing was. So my first character was based off of my in-game avatar actually. Elements of it, that is. Like my avatar, which was me. I don't necessarily look like that on a one-to-one level. For example, I've got no ink even though I've always wanted it. Priorities. I'm also not as much of a giant as he is, though people see me as a tall person. I know I said he's not a Gary Stu, but I hear this from a lot of people who also enjoy writing, and that's that you unintentionally insert parts of yourself into your characters. I think it's near impossible, especially if you're deep into it. So I'm going to go ahead and point out the rest of the similarities for you, because I know myself well enough to be able to spot them without even looking that hard. So for starters, Jikdur is an introvert, nowhere near to the level that I am, and he can snap out of that rather easily. But we'd both rather sit there and just listen to a conversation unless we feel as though there's something we can add to it. Which is why I'm currently talking so much. He's also got an issue with one specific knee, which was actually based on my own knee issues from my sports and ROTC marching growing up. Kind of lost my place there, but mine come and go and are in both knees. His stay persistent and is the result of an as of yet unrevealed injury from the past. I've chosen not to reveal it yet. No great mystery, it just hasn't come up and I haven't given a reason yet. And that's about it. Jikdur is more forgiving than I am, but he does things that I could not do, both from the point of view that it's a fantasy world where magic exists, and actually doing them and mentally being okay. I don't mean that he's not scarred by the people he's had to kill. I mean that I don't know that I could. No, my voice probably isn't best suited for this type of thing to begin with, and I am by no means a voice actor. I'm kind of nervous if you can't tell. But let's begin my first reading on this channel. If you enjoy this and have any suggestions on ways that I can make this better beyond just animating it into a cartoon, feel free to let me know. A cloaked and hooded man stopped some distance away from the eastern gates of the city of Varrock on the Crown's Road. It was a bustling place even as the sky began to darken, and he was a giant of a man with a battle axe strapped to his back. He stood at about 7.5 feet tall, and his hood fell back to reveal blonde hair that hung down beside his face. His beard was neatly trimmed for a traveler, and he took a swig from a metal flask with a large, glowing blue sapphire embedded into the side of it, and he held a staff in the other. The glow would seem to fade, and he seemed to stand with more vigor than he had been before as he put it back into his pocket. He didn't bother putting up his hood as he rummaged through another pocket for a letter that had made its way to him, somehow. But he hadn't questioned it due to the person this letter was from. If she ever needed to find him, she did, and a letter would make its way to him through his uncle, who served in some kind of secretive organization that worked for the Crown. Sometimes he replied, other times he had not much to say as he wasn't sure what to say. There was also the fact that they were briefly entangled in a romantic affair. Not that he had feelings for her still, and he was sure the opposite remained true. But they hadn't really seen each other in some time. Of course, he got the Titan and a few other newspapers that would report on her from time to time, and he would see pictures of her in those. And whoever had been finding him for her had probably processed some photographs of him for her to see. Fact remained that they hadn't actually seen each other in the flesh in quite some time. He found the letter he had been looking for in the end. It was slightly crumpled up, but wasn't too damaged otherwise. He let go of his staff, which stood on its own, and flicked the leather out, which unfolded itself and hovered in midair before him. This time, he put his traveling bag down on the road before him. It was worn, but at one point had clearly been a very nice bag that had probably cost a pretty copper simply due to the material. It had a simple tie and flap at the top and then 2 side pockets. He pulled a wooden box out of one and opened it to pull out a pipe and then placed the box back on top of his bag. These 2 were worn with age and use. He then took a small jar of Terramin from the other pocket. He unstoppered it and smelled it. It smelled like the swamp, but didn't taste like it, so he filled up the bowl of his pipe and held it in his mouth as he put the jar and box away. He stood upright, and as he started to read from the letter, he lit the Terramin in his pipe by producing a small bit of flame at the tip of his thumb. He put it near the Terramin and took a few gentle draws. He had already read it a few times by now and still hadn't made up his mind about the contents, even though he was here already. He tended to travel wherever his dreams told him to go. He never really knew what lay at the end of the road, though. Dear Jikdur Tyveson, I know that you are busy roaming the vast stretches of Gielinor for this brother of yours who has wronged you, but I am requesting that you meet me at my private estate in the city of Varrock. If you're not able to figure out where that is, it's the capital city of the Kingdom of Misthalin. From there, I am sure you're able to figure it out. Jikdur quickly exhaled a sigh, smoke swirling around his head, which the wind quickly blew away. You know I'm only kidding, but we are supposed to be friends, yes? It's been some time since we've even met, and this has nothing to do with Seer's Village. I think we can both agree that that's a very long time ago, and that what we said back then still stands. It would be a good thing for the both of us if you were to come to Varrock, though. You can settle down some, and maybe in time the resources of the Guard would prove useful to you in your endeavor. Just saying. You can be someone I trust within the ranks. Even if you do not join the Guard, meet with me. Now, friend. SV. Another draw on his pipe as he collected the note. He had been dreaming of this place, so he could at least see what she wanted. He grabbed his bag and slung it back over his shoulder before taking the staff and walking towards the city. There was a slight limp in his left leg. There's a lot of lore in that we only kind of hinted at, and in time, I'll try to get it all written out and put it into video format, even without your love. But there's not enough time for that in this video, and I do want to touch on at least some lore. So SV is Sora Varys, current leader of our clan. That's probably fairly apparent, but not in a massive world where anyone could be SV. Back then, she was just an up-and-coming lady of the court. We agreed more recently that this kind of explanation worked best to give reason for why Jikdur even came to Varrock in the first place. They did have a thing, and I will explain that in a later video most likely, because it's a big topic in current writing and is kind of funny for the two of us, I think, as we keep finding ways to reintegrate it into the story. But the magic, and the battle axe. So if it's not apparent, Jikdur is a Fremenician. His stature in the magic is more to do with him being half Majorat, though. Look, I did say that this is an alternate Gielinor, and I can't make my own art for him because I'm just not good at it. And that wouldn't matter anyways, as you'll see later. All of my inspiration art comes from Pinterest, so I can never be sure who to credit, but if I can find the credit, I'll be sure to try and do so myself in the video when it pops up. If it's missing and you know who it is, you can leave a comment and I'll verify and fix it. Thanks. But back to my shoddy drawing abilities. Yes, I know that practice can help. I have tried practicing, and I even have one of those drawing tablets to try and get into it more. Honestly though, I'm more of the mind in this modern age that I should just prioritize things that I'm good at, or at least think I'm halfway decent at. Like writing. I'll let you be the judge of that, and I'm sure there's a question many already familiar with role-playing have, and that is having a half-Majorat character god-modding. Well, I made it to my position as the Lord of Roleplayer predominantly using Jikdur and related characters. So probably not. I'm being a bit snarky, but maybe it's power creep, or maybe it's because these kinds of characters can be used just fine so long as you use them respectfully, and at least give them exploitable weaknesses. Jikdur's leg to this day pains him, and if one isn't too intimidated by him and knows that, they can use it to their advantage, and even with his ability to use magic, it's very helpful. I know that there's a limit on these guys and all, and I know they're basically demigods naturally. Zamorak has been a Mazzaroth god for this whole time, and Azanadra has become one more recently, which is cool. But this is an alternate version of Gielinor, and these characters can be used properly in the right hands. Are my hands the right ones? I don't know, truthfully, but no one has ever complained to me about it. I'll freely admit that sometimes I show their strength on purpose. They are strong, and we all know that. But it's never done in a role-played PvP situation without the agreement of the other parties, and I pretty much always have Jikdur holding back, kind of like Spider-Man does. For those who don't know, this was hinted at in No Way Home with Andrew Garfield's Spidey, by the way. But Spider-Man has to pull his punches or else really nasty things can happen without him meaning for them to. That goes for all my Mazzaroth characters too, unless I really need that brute show of force to spice it up or for story reasons. Kind of like the next character we're going to talk about, his brother. Clearly, Jikdur has stuck around, and he did join the guards in the end. The guards are a sub-clan, which is like a clan within the clan, and they all focus on a specific thing together. The guards focus on what amounts to medieval cop roleplay. It may sound silly, but it was the sub-clan I was the most active in, and I even led it twice. On the first occasion of joining the guards, I actually didn't get that far, because remember, I went inactive. But on my second time in, I was far more active, and it's where Ishtari comes into play, actually. Somehow I was smart enough to foresee that I should give Jikdur a loose surname instead of one that was set in stone. You heard it earlier. Tyveson, the son of Tyve. This name was based off of the Norse god of justice, Tyr. Now at the time, there wasn't meant to be any symbolism in choosing the name Tyve for his father or even basing it off of Tyr. I love Norse mythology and even its roots, and the Frems are the fantasy Norse of Gielinor, which is why I went that route with it. But I've definitely tried to somewhat embody Tyr through Tyve when he does come up since, even though he's dead. And of course I do it through his son as well, Jikdur. Jikdur is simply my Frem name, if you're curious. But I always knew that I should give him a real surname one day. I had already made him odd for a Frem by making him a magic user. Not as a primary thing, by the way. His axe is still his closest friend even today, but he used it and still does. So I took the daring plunge and decided to make him half Mazzaroth and introduced his brother, Malekith Ishtari. You already see it, but there's more to it than that. There are some parts from that time period that have been entirely retconned out, and I apologize, but it was because I hadn't made up my mind where I was going exactly yet at the time. For example, his father was dying in the present time at that time, but his death actually happened in the past. I was already in full swing introducing his brother, but hadn't come up with anything really. It was acting before I thought. Jikdur used to be 102 years younger than he actually is now. That's all I'll say. But I already had Ishtari and the Mazzaroth part down. The Mazzaroth-ness of them is what played into the name choice actually. So let's finally talk about what influenced this name. Everyone's heard of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? If you didn't watch the anime, you probably played the card game. Or maybe it was one of the many video games that came out back when I was a kid. Whatever. I don't play much anymore, but I do have a bunch of cards still. The inspiration came from the Battle City arc though, and anyone who's watched or read it knows exactly where I'm going with this, so let's talk about the absolute legend that is Malek Ishtar. Yeah, that was the root of the inspiration, and you can even see it in Malekith's name, which was actually Malek at that time. The in-lore reason is that he went by that. The real reason is that I added eth to the end after his death. Malekith and Malek are two pretty different characters, but I became increasingly annoyed by my younger self's insistence on just straight lifting the name Malek. Apologies to Kazuki Takahashi. Rest in peace. But that's only one part of what inspired the name Ishtari. The other part is kind of a combination of two things. First was the decision to go half Majorat, which led me to looking at the Silmarillion in search of some kind of other inspiration. I love Tolkien. I found it in the end, and we'll just get to it. The Ishtari. You already see it, but I am aware that not everyone has read Tolkien, and just like the movies. So, if that's your jam, think of Gandalf and Saruman. Morgoth is the true Dark Lord, not Sauron. If none of this makes any sense to you, I don't think it matters much. Just know that the Ishtari came from a class of beings who approximate angels in the world of Middle-earth called the Maiar. I can talk Tolkien all day, honestly, so I'll try to keep this quick. But the Ishtari are separate from the Maiar in that they are actively engaged with mortals on Middle-earth, and they're trying to guide humanity towards a favorable outcome. Well, there you have it. The whole story behind my name. Mostly. It's beyond just the two brothers now. Jikdur didn't know it at the time, but he already had a daughter named Arya, who was operating as a pirate and would eventually be captured and brought to the dungeons in Varrock. He was the master at arms at the time, and something inside of him said not to execute her, and he enlisted her in the guards as her punishment instead. He may not have known who she was, but he felt as though she was young and still capable of change. Furthermore, she hadn't caused any real harm. Since then, they've both become aware of that and have formed a rather strong father-daughter relationship, and it's because he does care for her and would have been there for her if he had known of her existence, and Arya knows that. I'll explain it all in time if you let me, but her name comes from the inheritance cycle. No real reason for it, I just like the name. She is a raging lesbian who now leads the Navy and will be marrying one of the Queen's eldest daughters. It's not as engaging when there are only a few people, but Jikdur's married to a Fremenician woman named Scotty as well, who is named after the Jotunus. Sorry for the spoilers, but this happened sometime after Malekith was executed. They pretty much fell in love instantly and already have 3 children together. A set of twins named Freya and Frey after Norse mythology, and another son named Tive after his father. He's also adopted a young vampire named Jonathan because he didn't really have a family, and Jikdur wanted to give him one. And there's also his mother Anodyne, whose name was based on Trindine when she was just a name. He also has some cousins because I mentioned an uncle earlier. His name is Vis, which is short for Vis Rakiel. I don't know where the full name came from, to be honest, but Vis is spelled like the angel from Dragon Ball Super. There is an in-lore source for the name Ishtari as well, actually, and that would be Vis's wife, Katrina. She was born as a human in the Second Age and was gifted vampiric abilities due to her service. She had already been given a nickname prior to this, though, Ishtari. So, she chose it as her family name when she was allowed to ascend. Vis and Anodyne are brother and sister, obviously, and when Vis married Katrina, he took the name Ishtari, and Anodyne decided to take it as well, because her and Katrina were very close friends already. I know that love and marriage and children and all that aren't really normal for the Majorat, but these are my Majorat, and, this is what I've decided to do with them instead. In our lore, it means something along the lines of magical one, or one imbued with magic in ancient Pharynthrian. This was all decided after I chose the name, except for its meaning, actually. If you've reached this part of the video, thank you very much for sticking around this long. I know that this is kind of boring, and maybe you don't even really care about it. But unfortunately, that's most of it for this video. I was actually going to ramble off some more lore and thought this video was going to get a bit bigger because of it, but I've restrained myself in the end. If you want to leave me a like, comment, or even possibly subscribe, I'd be very thankful for it. I know I'm very early on and I'm talking about a rather niche part of the Runescape community, but I wouldn't mind growing this channel even more. I have so many ideas that I want to talk about, and I plan on talking about other topics as well in time. Just because I know myself, and eventually I'm going to want to talk about something more than just my role-playing, or even RuneScape for that matter. Can't tell you how much I want to talk about what's going on in One Piece right now, but I'll behave and just focus on RuneScape for the time being. You can also follow me on X, which is where I plan on posting all of my games for sure. And there haven't been much of these in the process of making this video. I have ADHD, which a lot of people confuse with simply having an inability to focus on things, which is true. But the opposite is just as true because you can hyper-focus on something and suddenly hours passed. And then you're wondering where they all went. And that's exactly what's happened in the process of writing the script, actually. I will try to get better at that. The footage isn't meant to be riveting, necessarily, but I've just been trying to stay away from using AFK footage. But, I mean, I'm probably going to have to get over that, because I'm not always in the mood to actively get something done in the game, and it's a medieval cookie clicker in its gameplay loop. So, yeah. I'll also probably start throwing in footage from other games. RuneScape is still one of my favorite games to this day for some reason, but sometimes you need a break, right? Well, hey there. This is live recording right now. I wanted to go ahead and talk to you about my interface, just like every other single creator is right now. I actually have two different interfaces if you want to use them. I have my main one and you can only see part of it here. So, let me show you the full thing. So here we go. This is my full UI. I've pointed this out before, but those black bars on the top and bottom indicate that I have an ultra-wide monitor, which is why I capture my footage in the way that I do. However, I do have two sidebars as well. So, yeah, this is the full UI. If you want to go ahead and grab it, Ishtari is the name. And I'll go ahead and show you my secondary one as well. This is just a regular 1080p, though. And here is the secondary monitor one, if you want it. This one might end up getting changed in the future, FYI. That'll be all for this one, though. Next time I'll start talking about the founding of the clan and move on from there. So until next time, happy games.
Bye, have a great time.